What a great day to be an Alien fan. What's up? Your boy Free C here, and welcome to my review of Alien Romulus, the latest in the Alien franchise, and perhaps one of my most anticipated films of the year. I've watched every single one of these, including both the Alien vs. Predator films. So whenever I heard that a new one was in development, I perked up really quick. And as always, thank you so much guys for clicking here. I really do appreciate it. So in the film, it follows a group of space colonists who attempt to scavenge this abandoned space station, only to come face to face with one of the most deadliest life forms in the universe, the xenomorphs. To be honest with you guys, growing up, I was more of a Predator fan than an Alien fan. Yes, I grew up watching Alien, but I was always more towards the Predator movies. I always leaned more toward those than Alien. I always cheered for Predator in Alien vs. Predator. Go Team Predator. But yes, Alien is a franchise that I've always enjoyed, but for some reason, I just never enjoyed it that much. Not until about the past 6 to 7, 8 months. Whenever I bought the 6-movie collection on Blu-ray, the more I started watching that set, the more I actually started to appreciate these a lot more than I should have, especially growing up. Something changed in me the past year. I don't know what it is, but I've got a newfound respect for these films now. So even before the new film was announced, I just started enjoying these more and more, which began at the beginning of this year. They really rubbed off on me. Hell, I remember back when Alien Covenant had come out in theaters, I literally had to be pulled and dragged to go see that. That's how much my perception has changed of these films. Point being, I'm a fan of this franchise now. Even more so than I was. However, whenever they first announced this thing to be coming out, they announced it for Hulu, for straight to streaming to Hulu. I got sad. But then they backed away from that and they decided to release it theatrically after they realized, Prey did pretty good. We need to release this theatrically. Then I got happy again. Seriously, Hollywood, unless you want to die by suicide, stop it. Just stop it. Theaters will always reign supreme and be the ideal choice. It will always and forever be our church, especially for an IP such as this. Now going into this, I found this to be the most diverse one. I've heard a lot of rumblings online saying that this was the one that was made for the fans solely, which is kind of a bad thing in a way, saying that it was the most fan-serviced of them all. But was this everything I wanted in an Alien movie? Did this hit me in all the right spots? Or was this just fine? Or did this just tear me up inside faster than a chest burster? Starting off with the positives for Alien Romulus, director Fede Álvarez definitely knows how to direct horror. He definitely knows how to make a good horror flick. This makes his 4th directed film. I've never seen The Girl in the Spiderweb, but this with Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, he hadn't disappointed me yet. Both of those was fantastic, especially Evil Dead. The level of shock value that he puts in his films is just breathtaking. And same applies here. There's nothing held back here. He's awesome at making you feel like you're right there with the characters, just experiencing what they're experiencing. Like you're there with the characters going through the exact same thing that they're going through. Of course, this one goes back to its horror roots. You had the sequels after that original 1979 film, which was more action-eccentric, sci-fi action-eccentric. Here, they kind of go back to that first film. They still have some action sprinkled around in here, but it's mostly focused on the horror side. Hey, no complaints here. They go back to basics here. It's very eerie, very claustrophobic, very dark, and good at making you feel trapped. I loved it. I love how the xenomorph creatures looked. I liked the practical effects. That was one of the main problems with the last Alien film, Alien Covenant, which was some of it was kind of CGI. It wasn't terrible, but here they actually go back to basics as they did with everything else in this film. They try to make it as close to that first original film as possible, and that was one of them, which was going back to the practical effects, especially with the way the creatures looked. The design and the effect, it was really effective. If anything, they were even bigger and scarier and meaner. And it really works for the tone of this film. I even liked what they did with the face huggers here. It seemed like they amplified them to a 10. Just something about them just reigned more supreme in this than any of the previous films. Even the chest bursters. When the one poor unfortunate character endured that, it definitely reigned supreme. It just something about it, they just changed for the better. Again, all power to you, Fede Álvarez. Not to mention you have a bunch of jump scares that actually worked. Yeah, it wasn't these cheap jump scares. It was these honest, true, faithful jump scares that actually served a purpose and didn't feel forced. It actually was effective just as much as anything else that worked in this film. And you got some pretty good characters here, minus one, which I'll talk about in the negatives here in a minute. Some pretty good performances here. Not all were big, but was still good enough for the story. It's mostly cannon fodder, but was still pretty good. It's not like any of them was useless or anything. The way that the story went, they still served a purpose, even the ones that weren't that big. Still pretty decent. Especially in Cailee Spaeny, who plays our main lead of the film. She's basically kind of like the Ripley character of the film. And what was great about her was she wasn't trying to be an exact carbon copy of Ripley, of Sigourney Weaver's character. She wasn't trying to be so much of that as much as maybe a commemorance of the character. Like one of those little Easter eggs that they sprinkled around in here. Like some of those callback moments that this movie had. But Spaeny was her own character. And I thought she was awesome. Maybe not up to Sigourney Weaver's level, but pretty dang close. I even like the synthetic android we get in Andy, played by David Jonsson. Sure, we get android synthetic robots throughout this whole entire film series. But here it felt different. He's sort of like the little brother to Cailee Spaeny's character. Yeah, they sort of give him sort of like this family dynamic. They're just something new, something fresh, and something that Jonsson did really well. He sort of has like this childlike innocence, you know, minus the second act. But he sort of has like this kind of like a childlike innocence about him, which kind of made it refreshing and pretty interesting. But he pulled it off pretty well. And I thought their dynamic between him and Spaeny's character was pretty good. As far as my nitpicks goes, they're very small and minute nitpicks. I love this movie. Don't get me wrong. I definitely did love this movie. But moving on to my mixed, there was some callback lines that kind of got to me a little bit in sort of a weird and not so well-paced, well-felt way. As mentioned before, this movie may seem like one that is just made solely for the fans, and that's it. Which, in a way, when you really think about that, it's not really a good thing, but it's just, it depends on how you handle it and how they perceived things, you know, certain things. And it seems like the callback lines are the main source of this. What worked was a lot of them did actually work. They didn't feel cheesy. They didn't feel like they were forced. I thought a majority of them was actually handled pretty nice and pretty carefully. But there was one line, which I will not get into, spoiler free here, but there was one line that gets mentioned of those old films that they tried to replicate in this new one that was just so cringeworthy. As soon as it happened, I was like, no. It's kind of cringeworthy, and I just, no. Everything else, you know, a lot of the other callback lines was handled carefully. But to be honest with you, I don't really think that we needed any of them. You know, as much as I don't think that they all sucked, I just don't think we needed any of them. But that one line, oh lordy, not a good way to say it. And trust me, if you're an Alien fan, you pretty much know which one I'm talking about. But again, moving on to my negatives, there's always that one douche of the group. That one asshole character that you just wish would die. He was the one reason I actually cheered for the Xenomorphs. Only time, period. Honestly, I think they do that on purpose with the intentions of having us audience members actually cheer for the villains. Like a little experiment every now and then. I don't know, what do you think? Because it worked with me. But no, he was insufferable, plain and simple, and that's all I'll say about that. To sum this all up, I had a great time in this. Despite its shortcomings, which is very little, I enjoyed this a lot. This is the one film in the franchise that I can honestly say moved me. it's definitely worth owning. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Alien Romulus. What was your thoughts on it? Have you seen it yet? Are you a fan? Was this exactly what you wanted in an Alien film? Are you glad that they went back to its horror roots? Or do you prefer the much more action-eccentric films? What are your favorite Alien films? Or maybe this isn't a franchise for you. Leave your comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for clicking. I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Make sure to click that bell icon so you don't miss a thing. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.